This episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Restoration Partners. Hey, every restoration company needs A players on their team. That's where Restoration Partners comes in. They are one of the largest recruiting agencies in our industry, and they recruit for all positions. When it comes to sales reps, they even recruit and train them for you. Imagine how it would feel to have a sales rep that was already trained. Restoration Partners is here to support your success. Find them at rpbygte.com. That's rpbygte.com. Hey Restorers, welcome to a fresh episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Every time I say that, I keep thinking I need to change it up some and say something different, but you guys are used to me by now, so welcome to this episode. I have a returning guest on the show with me today, Mr. Gregg Taylor, who is with Exactly by GTE, and they are launching something new in the industry that has to do with sales. So as anybody who's listening to this knows, sales and restoration can be really tricky. And if you are like a lot of contractors out there right now, your volume might be down. You might be having maybe a little bit of a slower year. Yes, last year was also a little bit slow for some people compared to maybe 2023. We're kind of in this era where restorers are having to innovate, find different ways to bring in jobs, bring in revenue compared to in the past when people would just file a claim. As homeowners think more and more about whether or not they want to file a claim, and the industry consolidates, we got to get more creative and better with our sales strategies, better with our sales management, better with who we're targeting, all of those things. So that is where the conversation today takes us, sales, which I know is a hot topic anytime we talk about it on the episode. So Mr. Taylor, welcome back. I am going to toss it over to you to kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background.
Thank you for having me and having me again, which is great. You do a wonderful job on this podcast. We kind of ran into this focus on sales just because of our recruiting history. Mm-hmm. So for the last 5 years, we've been recruiting under the Exactly by GTE brand. We just recently rebranded it to Restoration Recruitment Partners. We grew the company and scaled it really quickly, mainly because we've got some super clients that are out there. But Michelle, I think what set us apart early was I had spent some time as a consultant with Paul Davis, and I decided it was very important for me to go to owner school. And going to owner school equipped me with the knowledge that the owners have versus just a piece of the business or that piece of the business. I got to see the entire picture. And that has helped us grow the recruiting side. Where we got into Restoration Partners was in January of 22. I made the statement to our team that estimators are going away. And that was our number one placement in 2020 and 2021 was estimators. So this is going to go away. We need to start really focusing in on sales, and we need to get polished up on that. And that was kind of the genesis. We started to get more calls about sales reps, but we saw turnover. And turnover is frightening for a recruiting agency. It's very scary. Yeah. So we decided to ask ourselves the question, what else do we need to ask the owners that are interested in somebody? And really two questions. Who's going to train them and who's going to manage them once you hire them? And owners gave me some great, answers, scary, but great. One lady said, Greg, you know us, there's 6 of us that own it. And I got the short straw. I got to hire a sales rep. I don't have time to talk to them, right? And so it's those type of conversations that said to us, we need to come up with a better solution.
Yep. Yes. So what were the reasons you were finding a lot of turnover? So as you've hired salespeople into restoration, what are you finding is the number one reason people leave restoration sales?
Yeah, well, for restoration sales specifically, it's a lack of training. And you gotta, I understand it. I mean, if we're generalizing, most folks that own restoration companies come from an operational background, mm-hmm. not a sales background. So suddenly you've got a sales rep that's going to cause you to think on the left side of your brain. And most of us are not really skilled at that. And we're into something else. And so that's the big reason is they feel like they're not trained. I would say the second biggest thing is the goals that they're given are not achievable. And a lot of firms think that, we pay, 800% commissions. Well, That's great, but they got to get somebody, they got to find that person, and then they have to wait for the revenue to come in to start getting any of it. That needs to be understood, right? And I think we're still trying to break down those walls to that.
Sure. Okay, so talk about the expertise behind the scenes within your company, within Restoration Recruitment Partners, that brings in the knowledge base to be able to train and help in sales specifically.
Great question, and I think it's really what set us apart. So once we decided that we wanted to do this, we felt we had to do three things really well, Michelle. We had to recruit an A player. We had to get them trained properly. And then we needed to provide some ongoing coaching and management for that person. So it was a lot more in depth in terms of the infrastructure of our company. What was a training program that was a repeatable process? And I was referred to a guy in Chicago, Tim Miller, owns a company called Business Development Associates.
Hmm.
Tim's 22, 23 years in the industry. And I had been talking to some sales trainers. Tim had a system. And to me, that's what set it apart. It wasn't the trainers. Trainers could be taught, but the system is something that is really, really important. So
Yes.
I thought training was so important that I said to Tim, listen, why don't you join me? Come in as a 50% partner in this division and let's build this thing out. And it took us about 8 months
Okay.
to get all of the moving parts that we saw coming in place, but having that system to train was the most critical piece of us being able to do this successfully.
Perfect. Okay, so in addition to training salespeople, what else is missing from kind of that whole sales leadership, mentoring, coaching, like just beyond that initial training of like, here's how to sell in restoration? What's missing beyond there? What are the other pieces to this?
Yes, that's a great point. I mean, it starts with trying to find an A player.
Hmm.
And so yeah, Michelle, I think you were in recruiting way back in your career, right?
Yes, I
And
was.
so you've got to find that A player for that location.
Yep.
What does that mean? That means that if somebody is paying a $95,000 salary, you're going to get an A player that's way up here. But if somebody's going to pay a $40,000 salary, then the best available candidate at that level is not going to be as same as the 95,000. So it starts there with finding that best A player. We use the OMG assessment, which gives us a 26-page report,
Okay.
right? And if you don't pass the OMG, you don't get to go forward in our process. For
Okay.
our recruiters, it's the most difficult challenge they run into because they have a great conversation. They like the person's got the background that seems to match. And then the assessment comes back and it doesn't give us the types of things that we feel are coachable and trainable, right? So it starts there. So once that is done, they go through 3 internal interviews with us. Once they finish the final interview, that's when we would introduce a candidate to our client for the first time. We do tell the clients up front, don't be surprised if you only get 2 people, you're probably only going to get 1 because 74% of the people fail the assessment. So that wipes out, a bunch of folks right up front. And then they got to be approved by one person. Then they have to get final approval in another interview. So in the high 90s, when we introduce a candidate to a customer hires them. And that's because of all the groundwork we do in order to get there. In Detroit recently, we went through 56 candidates before we found that A play. 56, right? And I know the owner very well. We worked with him a long time ago. We got him a GM a couple of years ago. He even called. He's like, GT, what is taking so long? And I'm like, we can't find an A player, man. We're trying. He's like, I trust you guys, but I'm anxious. I'm like, we're trying, but we're not going to give in. And we finally found them somebody, and they love them. That person just came out of training. I saw an email, but it wasn't to me, but I was copied on it. And it said the guy finished with the #1 score in our training class, right? So I was
Wow.
pumped. The owner had the patience to wait. We got them the A player. So A player is number one. The training. Who does it? We brought in a guy that's got 20 years experience in restoration. He drove the sales organization in Pennsylvania from about $4 million to about $11 million in 5 years. He has had super successful sales reps who are under him, and we brought him in as the senior trainer. It's a 4-week training program where the candidates got modules that they have to do every day. The modules end in a test that they need to pass, and they are also meeting with a live trainer every day. And this allows the process to continue to grow. I may pass a test, but I may not be good at what I just passed. And so the live trainer is going to make sure that not that I just not get it, but do I understand it and can I use it? I think the last piece on the training that's super, super important is we also build a pipeline and a database for them during those 4 weeks. Because, Michelle, I have been there where I've hired a salesperson and they go through training, and then the first Monday they're sitting in front of me saying, "Where are my leads?" Right? It's like, this is not so we missed something in the
Yes.
process. We saw that, and having them have places to go is critical. Are they going to screw up when they first go out there sometimes? Yep. Are they going to call on somebody who says you came at the right time and here's a big deal? Yep. But building that pipeline out during training not only gives them a place to go, but it teaches them the consistency of reporting inside a CRM, which of course ownership wants.
Yes.
And then lastly, we end with the ongoing management and coaching. If an organization doesn't want that, we do a 1 month transition to get the ownership or the management up to speed with what the rep was just trained on. And we make that transition over to them. Most of our clients want that ongoing coaching. We do it 6 month terms, and it's not an issue. But that kind of gives you the overview of the whole thing.
Perfect. Okay. Talk a little, you just touched on it, but talk about ongoing. All right, you've got your salesperson dialed up, but now they have to keep it going and they have to, keep in a lot of restoration organizations, especially if they're independents, don't have maybe the budget to have a full-time sales manager. They might have a salesperson, but they don't have a sales manager that's actually helping keep things going. So where does that fit into this equation?
It's huge, and you hit the nail right on the head. Even if you've got the skills to be a good sales manager, you own a restoration company, man, in the emergency business. Like,
Yeah.
things happen every day. That's the beauty and the challenge of what they do, but it also doesn't necessarily set up a good ongoing system to do the type of management that a rep needs. So they literally graduate out of training, and then they move over to a sales coach.
Okay.
So they're no longer dealing with the training piece. They now have a sales coach that's dedicated to them. Begins meeting with them, Michelle, every single day. We want to take a look at what's our plan for today? What did we accomplish yesterday versus our plan? What's our plan for tomorrow? And also, what are we running into? Need a sales coach to say, have a commercial vertical. Let's talk about that, right? Because based on your questions or your comments, I can see a little bit that maybe you're not quite getting that down, and that's what the ongoing coaching provides.
Okay, perfect. That makes sense. Okay, I want to take a little bit of a tangent because you talked about salespeople leaving. So ideally, with good training and continued ongoing mentoring, they're going to stay. But compensation is huge for
Mhm.
salespeople. So what are some of, you don't have to give numbers because every market and every position is different, but what are some of like the best compensation packages you've seen for salespeople to help keep them incentivized, help lure them in? Find that balance too, which I know is always a struggle, finding the balance between what the base is and what the commission
Mhm.
structure is.
Mhm.
So what are some of the good compensation packages you've seen?
It's a great question. I mean, yeah, I honestly, I feel the same pain on the recruiting side of our business. I mean, recruiting takes a bit. right? You think you got something down, and the owner likes the candidate, and the owner says, let me think about it for a couple of weeks. I'm going on vacation, right? And so suddenly, this deal you thought was going to take place in January doesn't end up taking place until March, right? And it's like, you got to be kidding me. How am I going to keep the overhead going during this period? It's not easy. So we know that in sales, these guys need to have a base. Like, that's critically important. The base needs to be market based. We can help do the research. In fact, most of the time we're asked, what's the rate? We literally will tell an owner, you're overpaying in this market, right? But the markets are strange. I'm going to tell you right now, yesterday I dealt with Louisville. The average pay for an outside sales rep is $91,000 and $22,000 in commission. Who would have thunk it, right? Louisville. So you look at that market and you say, okay, for us to be, successful, here's where we need to be. We can't be at 91, but that gives you an idea that 35 ain't going to get it. And we do see a lot of those extremely low numbers in Indeed posts that are, that potential clients put out there. And they like to believe, and I get it, that, if we offer really good commissions, these guys are going to be fine. But understanding that restoration is something nobody outside of the industry even knows what it is. If you're paying me 20% commissions on what? Is the sale a $5 sale? Is it a $300 sale? So people are not going to respond to your ad. They're just, you're putting a lot of money out there and not getting quality responses. So you do have to have a base. I think it needs to be market based. And I think the commissions, in most times, Michelle, we ask our client to dial it down a little bit. So about 3% commission on mitigation is a really good number for the company to be profitable and for that sales rep to make money. I think the last piece is for us to be honest. If you're recruiting a sales rep who is uber talented and they need to make $150,000 in the first year, they're probably not the great person for where you're at in most cases, right? And so you want to be honest with them about, here's what the expectation is now, which will build to this and build to that. But there's not that disappointment that, I told you in the interview I needed to make, 150, I'm tracking to do 73,000. Like, if we're honest up front, that's going to keep us from having problems on the back end.
Yeah. Yes. Are there any qualities that you look for in salespeople? Because obviously restoration is small. So I know a lot of restorers probably come to you and they're like, I want somebody with a book of business, which doesn't always work out well either, because there's non-competes. Well, kind of not well. Anyway, you know exactly what I mean. So what kind of qualities do you look for or recommend that restorers look for a good salesperson that might not have restoration experience?
It's a tremendous question because it's a challenge, right? So we definitely want somebody with a book of business, but the business needs to correlate, right, to what we're doing. Somebody that sold to barber shops, probably that book of business probably not going to be overly helpful, right? So you're looking for, in most cases, some sort of commercial background, if you can find it. In terms of person, and you may not find it, and that's okay. What we're looking for, though, is somebody that has done face-to-face, business to business, right? We get a lot of folks who apply that have done fantastic selling in-home stuff. That's a different world, right? We are looking for folks that have done business to business, face to face. No remote work. We don't, also, you have to look deeply and ask the right questions in an interview. Sometimes a person sat in the office and made phone calls. Or they were successful with incoming phone calls that came in and they turned those into sales. We got to have a hunter mentality, certainly at the beginning, somebody that's hungry to go out and go find the business. But I think, to be fair to them, it's important to say that while it might be 90-10 at the beginning, hunting to farming, you're going to end up doing more farming than hunting after a while, because now you've hunted and you've got those folks. And considering no revenue is generated until they have a loss, it's important that you stay in front of them. It's important that you maintain that relationship and you grow that relationship and you get referrals from that relationship. So we look for that hunter mentality, but they also have to have the ability to communicate well and to create relationships so that the farming activity can also be successful.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, anything else that we haven't touched on that you want to add related to recruiting or sales or anything like that, restoration related?
Yes, I think that it's super important for folks to understand the value of training. In fact, I think that in 2026, I hope I'm right because I tell my team this, and they will tell me if I'm wrong. But I said in 2026, my expectation is that the training part of our business will be the biggest. And that's because it's okay if you already have a sales rep, right? We get sales reps that have had a year experience, 2 years experience, and the owner says, you know what? I like they never were trained. Let's get them into your training program so that they can get better. The owner may choose to have us continue to manage them or not, but getting your rep trained is critical. No matter how many years they've been in the business, they're not going to come out of training worse. They're going to come out of training better. And I think that is really, really important. So getting them trained, that 4 week period of time, sure, we can set up the classes where, they're done by noon or 1 o'clock and they can still go to work and do the other things you need them to do. But getting them trained is going to help with retention. They're going to understand that you value them because you're spending money to get them better at what they do. And when they're exposed to things from a different viewpoint than what they've just been exposed to at their office, they're going to get better. If I could say one more thing, I think that a sales-focused organization is not just about the sales rep. We are going to look at other positions that also need to be trained to talk about sales that can help. So you've got support staff, the person that's answering the phone, how your estimator or your project manager or your tech is interacting, all those things, when you put them together, you've got a sales-focused organization, and that's what we're looking to get to at the end of the day.
Yes, that makes perfect sense. Okay, before we wrap it up, I always like to try to end on something fun. And so when I think back to my recruiting days, I'm thinking of like, I had interesting stories, and I'm sure you do, or from your team, you've heard interesting stories. I've had owners on treadmills trying to FaceTime the candidate during interviews and people showing up drunk. I've, more been like a therapist almost to some of my clients than a recruiter, it's a whole thing. So I'm just curious if you have like a favorite tidbit or story or something. You don't have to be super
Yeah.
specific to identify
So
people.
there was a location in the Northeast United States. They were desperate for an estimator. We found them like A+ player estimator. And the interview, I'm just going to throw a day and a time out there. I can't remember exactly, but let's say it's Thursday at 3:30. So the estimator, we sometimes have them call us from the car so that we know that they're there. So the estimator got there like 3 o'clock, goes in about 3:15 and is waiting. It's 4 o'clock. It's 4:30. It's 4:45. Finally, the owner comes out and he says, "What the F are you doing here today? Our interview was not scheduled for tomorrow, and that's why I had you sit out here." And we double checked, the interview was scheduled for Thursday. Obviously, the candidate left and he's doing a great job at a competitor.
Yeah.
But he exploded at this guy after making him sit out for that period of time. And you're like, dude, you have no idea how hard we worked to find this great candidate, and we're probably not going to work with you anymore. Like, it was insane, Michelle, but that's our
Recruiting is
business.
so hard.
It's tough.
It's really hard.
I am so grateful to our people who do it, and my competitors, people who do it. There's some great recruiters at my competitors, right? I'm telling you, if I had to do it, we'd be out of business in a week. I don't have the temperament that they do to get this done. So to all of them, thank you for what you do for our industry. You're absolutely an important component.
Yes, 100%. And it takes a totally different part of the reason I had to get out of it is because I didn't have the temperament for it either. I got to the point where I'm like, I cannot do this anymore. It's you guys or me. I don't know. So
For sure.
I totally hear that. Well, Greg, thank you so much for being here, sharing your
Absolutely.
stories and sharing more about your rebrand that you have that we've shared on our website and your sales partners and all the training that you have going on. So thank you so much. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
That'd be great, Michelle. It's always good to see you.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.